let's talk about BYU basketball and what they need to do looking forward here. Now, there are a bunch of guys BYU's contacting the portal. I could list off name after name after name, but the bigger point to be made here is BYU's got to look inwards, and they've already started doing that, it feels like. You have a guy like like Kanon Catchings, who decides it's in his best interest to explore his options by hitting the transfer portal. Hey, I wish Kanon well, and I don't know what the future holds for him, whether it's at BYU, whether it's in the NBA, whether it's at another university. You wish him well and say thanks for everything you offered to BYU in your season in Provo if it comes to that. BYU's also looking outside of it. They obviously have a bunch of guys that they are interested in, but none bigger apparently than Dominique Diomande, who already has signed with BYU according to reports from On3. He's a 6'7", 6'8" wing player who spent last year, much like Kadeem Mboop for BYU, enrolling at midseason and redshirting for the Washington Huskies. Once the season ended, he decided to enter the transfer portal, and BYU, just days after their season ends, have already added their first transfer portal product in Diomande. If you look at his skill set, he's a uber athletic player. He shows a lot of offensive capability, ability to shoot the three with a step back that looks like it's absolutely deadly. Also not afraid to attack the rim. Played for a pro team over in the French U21 league, ADA Blois. I don't know how you say that right. But he averaged 15.7 points, 5.9 rebounds, almost 2 assists, and almost 2 steals while shooting 37% from beyond the arc in that league. That's pretty good numbers. And this looks like a guy who is not a bring in and see how he develops. This is a guy who is going to have an impact for BYU next year. I would think right now, many people probably look at this as maybe a guy who could replace Mawit Mag because according to some of the reports out there, this is a kid who has been on top 50 lists for the NBA draft. And if he is the 3-and-D guy that some believe him to be out there, he's got more size and more skills, it looks like, than maybe what Mawit Mag offered. And Mawit Mag ended up being a very key piece for BYU. I think that you have the opportunity for Diomande to be even better than that for the BYU basketball team. But that does not even discount what BYU already has in their arsenal. I just invoked the name Kadeem Mboop because he was just in the same circumstance as Diomande, as a mid-year enrollee who redshirted. And Boop is a guy that I myself have forgotten to mention, but he is an uber athletic product of the NBA Academy in Africa who BYU is very excited to see come along. I don't know where Mboop's ultimate position or future lies in terms of what he plays for BYU, but the physical skills you see on film from him are readily apparent. While I think a guy like Diomande, according to all reports, is probably a day one impact player for BYU next year, probably should be in the rotation at minimum, I don't know if Mboop's going to be in the rotation, at least at the outset of next season. The nice part is BYU's already been working with him, and with another 6-7 months of development before next season at minimum, what could he become under the tutelage of guys like BYU has on their coaching staff? I think there's a lot of excitement for him because he, much like Diomande here, is very long as an athlete, 6'8", 6'9", flashes a ton of potential as just a sheer athlete. But I wonder where his ultimate position lies on the basketball court. Is it as a wing player? Is it a 3-and-D guy? Can he be more than that? Or is he going to be stuck playing maybe the 4 spot for BYU? That's all into the future. But I think what BYU is trying to do right now is balance, obviously bringing in guys like Diomande via the transfer portal while also prioritizing making sure that they keep their guys at home. I don't think that Kanon Catchings will be the first or the last guy to leave BYU's roster to hit the transfer portal this go-round. There's already been reports out there about other guys who should be leaving maybe as soon as today, if not sooner or later, in terms of hitting the portal. I don't think all of them are intent on leaving BYU, but the simple fact of the matter is they are looking to cash in on NIL. And that obviously is a way to cash in on that, whether you want to stay in Provo or not, is to go in the portal, see what your ultimate value is on the open market, and then turn around and say, okay, I'm willing to stick around. Here's my price. This is free agency, folks. I talked about this being a professional sport. It is. And BYU will have its fair share of guys on this roster who were absolutely incredible for this BYU basketball team this past season, looking for a payday. They may make in the six figures. They may be looking for seven figures. Who knows what each player's individual circumstance may be? And some of them simply might be looking just for playing time, because it can be tough to be part of a successful program like BYU has shown to be this past season, but not be on the court. BYU played 10, 11 guys in the rotation. That was really, really cool to see. But there were other guys on that bench who had to be chomping at the bit saying, hey, I want to play. I want to have an impact. I want to have a feature role. Well, those feature roles may not ultimately reside in Provo, Utah. The big NIL payday some of them may be looking for may not reside in Provo, Utah either. You wish them well if they ultimately decide that their future is best served elsewhere. Do not denigrate these young men for an opportunity to go out and get money and be able to play the game that they love. It's a really, really tough circumstance that they find themselves in, and it can impact relationships when they decide to leave a program, hit the portal, and go elsewhere. But it's a business now. And that's the tough part about this is GMs of these different programs out there, they're making tough decisions as to who's going to be encouraged to be in the portal, because there may be guys on your roster that you're like, you know what, son, your services are no longer needed. You need to look elsewhere. And the business relationship, it goes both ways, and it cuts deep. It really does cut deep. But I think BYU's best interest is obviously to prioritize keeping their top shelf talent, guys like Richie Saunders, if he's interested, Jaeger Demon, if he's interested, in Provo, if at all possible, and make it worth their while financially to stick around. But also understand that other guys are going to leave, and then you replace them with guys like I've already talked about with Dominique Diomande. I am hoping to get more on Diomande that I'll pass along in future editions of the podcast, but at the outset, it looks like a very promising addition for BYU. And there's a reason why Washington and Danny Sprinkle, former Utah State head coach, wanted him in their program. BYU is the beneficiary of this. And I think right now you can already look and say, okay, Diomande looks like a great compliment for a guy like AJ DeBonsa to play off of. If he can truly set in the corner, hit 37+% from three, that's exactly what BYU wants to have next year. And more importantly, if he can bring it on the defensive end of the court and be able to play switching defense. The peel and switch is what BYU has been trying to implement, but hasn't had the athletes to implement it fully. Could Diomande be that next level of athlete that BYU needs to get to that? I hope so. So it's a very interesting time to track all this for BYU, because like I said, I could list name after name after name of guys BYU is talking to, reportedly talking to, maybe talking to. But in the end, the biggest goal is to put together the best collection of talent you possibly can, surround a guy like AJ DeBonce with the best talent that will complement and enhance what he already does as a feature player, and then see where the chips fall and see how far you can advance next year in March Madness. Crazy, crazy times when it comes to BYU basketball, but exciting times all the same. It's a really, really fun time to track it. And we'll be sure to pass along news and notes about individual players that have, I think, the type of talent that could make impacts for BYU in future editions of this podcast.